we're here today at a trade show. We're here to source a specific type of children's bicycle. It's a balance bike, and this is a great place for us to come and source that product. A few reasons why. First of all, we'll come to these type of trade shows and often find suppliers that are not even listed on the likes of Alibaba.com and global sources. Secondly, you can meet a lot of suppliers in a short space of time and have proper conversations with them. And thirdly, I mean, this is 10 minutes from our office in Shanghai, so this is a type of show. This one's for bikes, but we will come to all sorts of different industry-specific shows all the time, because for us it's a great way to be looking for new suppliers. You know how much? So far I've started looking, and some of the manufacturers is saying
Are you sure?
yeah. US dollar? England. Too expensive. How about with EVA tyres? Cheap. $14. It's basic. The EVA tyres on this, they look better than the $9 one. The $9 one, the tyres were all cracking, so I don't know what was up with that. Not very good, not very bad. Okay. This is why we're here. We're trying to understand the difference from a $9 bike to a $14 bike. I understand Hebei is a cheaper place.
This one we export to Canada.
Yeah.
The price is 21 USD.
Yeah. Okay, so we've been to the trade show and we've met a few manufacturers there. Now, we've identified two manufacturers that were very good on price, very similar on price, for exactly the same product. And at the trade show, they both looked great. So obviously what we're doing now is coming out to the factories to assess them firsthand and see what they're actually like. As you know, the proof is in the pudding, and that's why we do these trips, to come out and assess and see exactly what they're like. We've just arrived at the first factory, and we're in a less developed part of China. These guys are very cheap, and yeah, the first impressions, it doesn't look great, but let's go inside and see what they're actually like. Okay, so this factory does their own steel fabrication, so they get the metal tubes and fabricate it into a bike. They are buying in the wheels, and they're doing their own painting and assembly. So it's relatively small. Earlier I asked them how many people work here, how long they've been established. Well, they've established this factory 10 years ago, so you think this is what they've achieved in 10 years, and they've got 20 workers. So in terms of getting a very good price, I'm confident we can get a very good price from here. In terms of getting a very good product, I have my concerns, but again, let's go inside and see for ourselves. When we first got here, I was asking them, what do you do? Well, I said, do you do your own painting? Do you do your own steel fabrication, etc.? They told me, yes, we do everything. Then I actually started asking to see the paint workshop, to see the steel fabrication workshop, etc. And then only when they start taking me around the factory do they tell me, actually, no, we don't do our own painting. No, we don't do our own fabrication. Actually, we're only an assembly shop. And this is fairly common. When you get a factory that feels they have incompetencies, often they won't like to tell you and admit it outright. You often have these situations where it's smoke and mirrors, and they're trying to let you believe that the factory's one thing when it's not. And the interesting thing, they will do this all the way up until you actually get to the factory and you actually say, where's the paint workshop? So yeah, hence the importance of coming out here. If they're going to tell you one thing when you're actually at the factory, imagine what they're going to tell you before you even get here. Having a bit more of a look around this factory, obviously any importer or experienced importer will probably have experienced situations where they have, these silly defects, defective products. It's almost like the factory's sort of made the product okay, but there's all these defects and marks, etc. And it's when you're dealing with this type of factory where things are not stored and kept correctly. So these are just placed on the floor. So, okay, they're kind of wrapped, but they're on a dusty floor. So, you know, if these get messed around, okay, it's just a bit of dirt, but it's not professionally stored. What's more concerning is like some of these alloy wheels down here are on the floor, and those things will scratch, and you just start getting marks on your product, which means that when you sell it to the end consumer, you know, they're going to get a defective product. So, you know, it's just alarm bells going off in terms of how product is physically stored here. Now, the other thing, as I have just found out, that this factory, they don't actually manufacture any specific component themselves. They outsource everything and assemble. They're just an assembly shop basically. So they'll buy the wheels from one shop, they'll buy the handlebars from another shop. Now the problem with that and these small factories is you can get a scenario where, you know, maybe the first order's good and then you push them down on price or whatever, or for no reason the second order is just a different quality, and that could be because they changed the wheel supplier, or they've changed the handlebar supplier, or, you know, various different things. But basically every component of this product that you're going to get from this factory is being outsourced, and they might be outsourcing different factories at different points in time depending on who's going to give them the cheaper wheel, etc. Yeah, it's not a healthy situation. When you're dealing with a manufacturer that's actually making most of the components, then, you know, you're just going to get a more consistent quality product. We're in the production workshop now, and from what I can count, there's 3 workers here. As you can see, there's stuff everywhere. And it looks very haphazard. Now, any sort of professional factory producing bikes, it shouldn't look haphazard, it should look organised, and there should be a good system to what they're doing. I mean, just one basic example of why this would give me concern is these bike frames. They're beautifully painted bike frames. Okay, they've got some sort of packaging and protection on them. But there's big parts of the bike frame that have no protection on them. And like these parts, and they're just sort of stacked on top of each other and stacked on the floor. And the problem that this is going to give is, I mean, I can imagine a situation where you order a container and 10% or 20% of the bike frames have some sort of defect on the paintwork. So this is an example of, I guess, the bottom of the bottom. I mean, we're at the bottom end of the food chain here in terms of bike manufacturers. Yes, it's cheap, but are you going to get good quality products out of here? No. So another good reason for coming out to the factory is you can physically see what market they're actually producing for. You know, they can say, you know, we produce for this market or that market, but when you go out to the factory, you can physically see, okay, we're producing for the Chinese market, and these boxes also for the Chinese market. When you go and you see, for example, a factory that's got cartons with, you know, a German company or a US company or whatever, and, you know, they've got different German companies, for example, well, you know, or Japanese companies, you know that they're basically producing to a high standard because they've got, you know, a client base of German customers, for example. When you come and they're just producing for poorer nations or for the local cheap Chinese market, you know, are they really up to a general export grade? Are they really suitable for Western countries, you know, US, Europe, Australia, etc.? So, as I say, it's another advantage to come here is, again, the proof's in the pudding. You can see who they're actually producing for already. We're in the showroom, and yeah, look, they've obviously done all types of children's bikes, so we're in the right sort of factory to produce children's bikes. But as you can see by some of the colour schemes on some, you know, these are probably things that they've produced previously, and none of them are for the export market. They're all, to be frank, the easiest way to explain, it's all cheap Chinese junk. And would I want to buy this? Would we want to buy a container from here? No. To summarise what we've just seen at that factory, in 2 words, no good. I would not want to buy a container of product at that factory. A container product of balance bikes is going to be thousands of dollars. I wouldn't want to put thousands of dollars into that factory. No way. They're just very primitive. There's no organisation. There's no processes. They're so small. They're not actually manufacturing. They're just an assembly workshop. They're trading all these parts. Their workers are basically casual farmers. When they've got an order, they'll call a farmer from across the road to come and do this job for the day. It's just, you know, we're at the bottom end of the food chain here. Yes, it's a little bit cheaper, but, you know, as I always say, a cheap product is no good if the container is an expensive container, a load of rubbish. Okay, we've just arrived at factory number 2, the second factory we met at the trade show, and look, on first impressions, well, first of all, it looks like a factory instead of a farmyard like the previous place we've been. The second thing we've noticed straight away is obviously they have a certain production capacity here. They load in a couple of containers. One of the containers that they're loading at the moment is for a brand called Schwinn, which, if you didn't know, Schwinn is a very well-known and respected brand of bicycle. So look, on first impressions, these guys look pretty good, so let's go inside and see what they look like. Okay, so we've come inside the factory now, and straight away it's very obvious that they're a lot bigger. There's 200 people in this factory as opposed to the previous one, where there was about 5 actual workers that we saw working. Everybody's got uniform on, and as you can see behind me, there's lots of mould, but everything's organised. So in terms of organisation and professionalism, straight away we've probably increased about 2,000%. So go further along the production line and see what's going on. Okay, so as we're walking around this factory, we're seeing that they've spent money and invested money in the actual factory. They're using state-of-the-art Panasonic automatic welding machines, which is what a factory needs to do. It needs to invest in the right tools. It needs to invest to become more efficient so it can make a better quality product and sustain the prices. So we've just checked out this factory's preparation, and now we're checking out their paint booths. And basically they've spent and invested millions and millions of Chinese yuan in having these facilities here to be able to do what they do, and the result is you get a very well, highly professionally painted bicycle, and basically it's the difference between good quality and inferior quality. Okay, so another obvious thing that is very clear is when we're in the first factory, we saw a lot of products literally on the floor in a great big pile. Everything we've seen in this factory is stored on a pallet and in some sort of correct format, and look, this might seem basic, but this is so important because it's the difference between having a high percentage of defects and no defects at all. The major difference, or one of the major differences that we've seen at this factory, pretty much every part on the bike, with the exception of a couple of nuts and bolts, is actually manufactured here under one roof, which means they're able to control the quality of all the components that go onto the bike. Now, the other factory were basically buying in so many of the components, and the problem is they were probably incentivized to just buy the cheapest and lowest and crappiest components because they're trying to make a cheap bike. Right, okay, we're at the end of the production line here, and a few things a few more things that we've noticed going around here. The first thing is, there's a lot of workers here, and these workers, we've learned, are all trained to do the specific job that they're here to do. They're permanent employees of the factory, which is very different from the previous factory where they're basically casual labour or casual farmers. So here, they actually know the job that they're supposed to be doing, whereas the previous factory, they haven't been professionally trained. They might just do a day's work here or a week's work here, and then that's it. So very, very different on that front. The second thing that we've noticed here is, one of the beauties of going around factories is, as I mentioned downstairs, you can see the types of brand that that manufacturer is actually producing for. So we saw one brand, Schwinn, downstairs, and here, I don't know if you're familiar with this brand, but there's another brand called Mongoose, which are they're also quite famous. Now, basically, many factories often say, we produce for this brand, we produce for this brand, but when you actually come to the factory, it's very obvious. Now, the final thing that we've noticed here is, or we've seen, which is again very different from the last factory, is this machine at the end. Now, this machine does quite a few things at the end of production, but basically, one of the main things it does, which is a common problem, is it's weighing each individual box. And if that box is too light, it recognises that one of the workers has missed a component out. So that will get pulled to the side, and they will then find out what part is missing. It also counts the quantity that's actually being produced, etc. So it's just very, very well organised, and basically this is how it should be. You can come to this factory and everything that you're going to get out of here is just going to be done right because all the processes are right. So look, in terms of what we've seen at this factory, we're very, very happy with what we've seen.